I'm sure you will not recognize me. It is about half a century since we last
Is
met.
it? Can you hold just 1 second? I'll be right back.
Okay.
Hello? Okay. Well, we have those boudins, but get the fish if you want. Fine. But I have to. I'm on the television. I can't talk. All right, now I can. So please remind me so I can be. So my memory can be stimulated.
When I entered Yale Economics graduate school in 71, 72, and among people I knew as going on as tutoring fellows were Susumu, Salim.
Yes.
More famous people were Rick Levin, and Janet Yellen actually was on my orals board in my final exam. We actually discussed something she's not following, which is Sanders and Stolper theory. I returned to Sri Lanka after. Actually, I spent 1 year. I was an instructor at the Yale Law School also. Somebody was doing a course on introducing economics to law. None of this was of great relevance, actually, when I came back to Sri Lanka. And mainly, I think, because people knew me from my school days, that I got out of work under the new president and under the new constitution in Sri Lanka. And I started the stock exchange, which was a bitter fight, but anyway, did it. And then went to Nairobi in Kenya.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And I think I'll be going back there to do a better version of the stock exchange that actually goes to the people. The situation in Sri Lanka is absolutely dire. If you look at any statistics, you will see that our devaluation is one of the largest in the world, from 190 to 370 to the dollar. Our inflation rate, I predicted this about 3 or 4 years ago. It was going on a sort of hyper path. It has happened. And now even the official rate, which is watered down, is close to 90%. And there is no hope in sight. And unemployment is very high. You have to remember that in our countries, unemployment means no income,
Right.
benefits. So that you can see it on the street. There are people who are looking for food. Offering them money is of no use, they ask for food.
Right.
And the reaction of the government was, of course, on the balance of payments to restrict imports. Not necessarily a good thing, because imports are needed for the exports.
Right.
And the interest rate has been increased to about 35% for any kind of loan. And the banks are making tremendous profits. The money printing has gone through the roof, doubled, tripled. And there is an uneasy quiet because people don't know what to do. The situation actually, this I also give this broadcast to Kenya and Uganda. Uganda have a more of a following. They are not in the same situation as Sri Lanka, but all the same signs are there.
Right.
The IMF has come and basically they have told us that they will do a bailout if the debt is sustainable. Of course, if the debt is sustainable, there's no problem at all. So that is basically the situation. The government has changed with a new president who had very high hopes that the United States will come to his rescue. And he adopted all the necessary things. The same thing actually in Kenya and Uganda. So basically what we have is a situation of a government which most of our governments have had substantial corruption, that is true. But this goes far beyond that. And there is an economic collapse. Not so much in the East Africa, but definitely in Sri Lanka. So the government has to borrow, has to get in some money. And the old system of going and getting a 40-year loan from the Japanese at 1.5% interest, that's out of here. That age has gone. And though they talk of World Bank and Asian Development Bank loans, those are very unlikely. The loans that go to industries or the private sector that were at concessionary rates and a tenure of about 20 years, those are also no longer possible under the economic situation. So basically, there are Chinese loans, which have been substantial, but Chinese loans are only for infrastructure, and those are 10, 12 years at 6 to 8%.
How much?
Of course, fun.
What was the interest rate there on the Chinese loans?
6, now it's about 8%.
Okay.
They're basically commercial loans. Now, for the purpose of repayment, there are very, very strict conditions that basically end up with what is called handing over the land and government to the Chinese. The Chinese give a rationale for it. But you see, we also have, and this is the sort of sneaky part of it, the what is called sovereign debt, or the Euro bonds, or what Goldman Sachs and that crowd. Now, actually, all our countries are being pushed into that. So that is a 5-year bond, basically, and the interest rates are commercial. So it used to be about 6%. The last one Kenya tried for was 12%. And conditions are very strict in the sense that if you fail to repay, then immediately you go into bankruptcy, the whole nation. So how it has ended up for the last one that was repaid, the 2 new factors come in, which is the insurance companies on trading and the rating agencies. The rating agencies give us a bad rating, which sends the bond price down. But we are going to actually repay. So people are able to buy that bond at about 50% discount. The last bond that was repaid, almost a third, had bought it at 50% discount about 3-4 months before repayment. So they made a massive gain. And these conditions are very difficult. The earlier 40-year loans that were given, they also had a sneaky part to it. For instance, you get a Japanese loan to do the port, 40 years, 1.5% interest. From the government's point of view, 40 years means it's only $2.50 on 100 annually, plus 50 cents or $1 for the interest. It is very, very affordable. But then along with the port comes the motor cars and TV sets, and those are leased. And there are Japanese leasing companies, and those are now on a 5-year lease. And at interest rates more like 14, 15 at that time. Now the Chinese bond, which finance, they only come for construction. That construction also doesn't have an immediate repayment, but still the bond is, say, it's a 10-year bond on 100, that is you pay 10 a year, plus $16 on 100 every year. The Goldman Sachs is 5 years, so that is 20 plus maybe 7 or 8%. That is 28% a year.
Right.
So that is basically the situation. Our stock exchange has, for instance, has changed vastly from the days I started it. And it is now something that is designed for foreigners, that is for pension, they say pension funds, but it's all kinds of funds. And those funds demand a lot of conditions. So that is like a very good track that is being given, and we guarantee the repayments and profits and dividends and so on. All IMF programs tend to protect that track, which is investment into the capital markets or the stock exchange. But those don't come to the people. Those go into the very big enterprises who are actually financing exports.
Right.
So that is basically our situation. And what would you like to say about that, Richard?
Well, let me start by making one comment and asking you one question. First, the comment. Nothing in what you have told me is unique to Sri Lanka. In other words, as you yourself have noted, Kenya, Uganda show many signs of this situation, maybe at an earlier stage, but nonetheless, the process. I have seen variations of your story for Africa, for Asia, for Latin America. It seems only to be a matter of degree that it is worse in Sri Lanka than in these other countries, number one. Number two, second comment, and then my question. It is significant, I think, that it has gone further in Sri Lanka than in so many other places. And I think it's significant because it makes me wonder whether the major capitalist centers in the West either no longer worry about the social consequences of conditions like Sri Lanka, or they have given up. They are simply going to let Sri Lanka go, not sustain it, not in the last minute give you yet another loan which you cannot repay under conditions that self-destruct the whole situation. But that they are simply saying, we are not going to do it anymore, and we're going to let these countries devolve into chaos, into situations like Somalia or Ethiopia or the Dominican Republic or Haiti or a whole host of countries where the decision has been made, we are no longer interested in that. We just wipe our hands and we don't. So here's my question. Is that possible? are you sitting in a situation where you can go through a list the way you just did, showing me how each conceivable way to keep this situation going is in the end making it worse, not solving it? Is it possible that the West simply doesn't care? And then a subordinate question is another way of asking this question to say the following: we can't anymore do it. The only people who can do it now are the Chinese. And either the Chinese do it and it survives, or the Chinese don't do it and then it doesn't survive. Literally, it empties out. The people of Sri Lanka, the young people will leave. They'll go to India. They'll go elsewhere in Asia. It'll become a country of impoverished, older people dying. And this is, look, here in the United States, that's what Puerto Rico is. Large parts of Puerto Rico are simply ignored. When the hurricanes come, they kill people. They don't have electricity. They don't have gasoline. They are at a level of poverty we are unable as a culture anymore to do. There is no consensus to help these people. It's not just no consensus to solve the problem. It's no consensus even to provide temporary humanitarian support. Even the support for that is no longer there. By the way, the resources are there. The wealth is here. There's no question. Not a big problem if you look at what we have. But the political structure will not seize the resources to try to solve this problem. Not going to do it. The Republicans don't do it. The Democrats don't do it. Nobody does it.
I think that's a very fair comment, Richard. And I congratulate you for coming to that conclusion. It is a very sad thing, and it goes against sort of ingrained ideas and values persons like myself have. But it is a reality.
Yeah.
This very station that I'm going to broadcast your talk, there is a dearth of staff because they've all gone. I went to try to help some people to migrate, and while I was talking to we have a bureau that does this. While I was talking to the general manager of the largest exporter of people, he got a call from a permanent secretary of a ministry who offered his entire staff to be sent abroad because he said he just can't pay for them. He can't pay their salaries. He'll give them, they can keep their seniority and go abroad and come back in 5 years, 10 years, anytime, it doesn't matter. But he wants them to go.
Yeah.
In the last 1.5 years, our population is about 20 million, but a lot of them are abroad. Another 2 million left. There was an election in our city, and people went around campaigning. I asked them, what do you think is the population of our ward? And he gave a very small number. I said, how could it have come down to that? And then I realized, because there are a lot of aunties, uncles holding on to houses, but no children, no grandchildren. Right. They've all gone.
Right.
And with that, the skills and ability to tackle situations, that's also gone, are going. Yep. They are going into very, very difficult places. You will find the persons who are senior civil servants going and driving buses. The that that is a reality that is coming. Over the last 4 or 5 years, I have been doing fair amount of this social entrepreneurship work, and there are no social entrepreneurs anymore. The idea of entrepreneurship, I feel sorry. I try to do something for people I push
Uh,
into this, and the fact of the matter is that I can't interest even the U.S. embassy to spare some money for, you know, little bits of charity or development.
yeah.
Uh, I think you're quite right in that the Western world is washing its hands of by, but at the same time, I don't think that is a policy that can last. It is actually a policy that will come back in the boomerang.
Yeah. I have no doubt in my mind that that is the case. Let me drive home to you just, and it's only one example. The United States has already budgeted and spent close to $60 billion to give financial and military support to Ukraine. This is a war that the West cannot win, is not winning, will not win. But in the crazed logic of the West, they are spending $60 billion in a hopeless war while they pay the price of Sri Lanka and 20 other countries literally dissolving with all of the problems that represents. And remember, the problems are immediately made concrete because the export of people from Sri Lanka become the import of refugees and immigrants into economies that cannot absorb them. Can't do it. You know, we have more Puerto Ricans living in New York City than live in Puerto Rico. We have more, Mexicans now living in various parts of the United States than live in provinces of Mexico. It is, and they are the poorest of the poor. Their hopes are very slim. The minute the recession comes, they're the first ones that are thrown out. You are behaving here in a manner that is economically irrational. And when rational people, which most of them here are, behave in an irrational way, that's a sign that the situation is becoming impossible. And so they behave. So I sit down with policymakers who are all excited about Ukraine. And I say to them, let's suppose you're right, that the Russians are terrible and all of that. Is it reasonable to spend, and this is what they're aiming at now, before the new Congress comes in, the one just elected, the one that takes its position in January, the Biden administration wants to push through another 30 to 40 billion dollars. So we're going to get at about $100 billion for a losing war. And so I ask them, is that reasonable? To look what you could do in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. You could transform the position of the United States over there. And I'm not, I'm a critic. I don't celebrate capitalism, but I say to them, you know me, we all went to the right schools, just like you did, and all the rest. Why are you doing this? They have no answer. We sit there having our cup of coffee or our tea or our beer, and I say to them, just explain to me, what's the logic of what you are doing? No one in America, and I mean this, cares at all about Ukraine. There's no Ukrainian population here. There's no Ukrainian nothing. It is an attempt to make Europe into a vassal of the United States. That's the real agenda there. But I say to them, I know that that's the agenda, and you know that that's the agenda. Britain is finished. Britain can no longer be the American agent in and for Europe. And what's really going on now is that Germany is trying to become the alternative to Britain for the United States, which is why Germany is willing to support this Ukraine nonsense, even though it's very dangerous for Germany politically. Domestically, this is going to be a very difficult winter politically in Germany because the opposition to paying 5 times more for energy is enormous. But that's the game. It has nothing to do with Ukraine. So I'm saying to him, why are you doing, even getting Germany positioned as your new lapdog, your new Britain, now that Britain is no longer relevant, you throw them away. This is a very dangerous politics because of what is going on in the global South. Do you not see this? And their answer is, we have no time for that. We have no time. I get the same answer when I talk to them about climate change, about all of this effort they don't disagree, they don't defend it, but they say to me, we have no time for that. We are trying to hold on. By the way, some of your friends and classmates from Yale talk like this because I've stayed, personally friendly with them. They will say to me, the empire is dying. We have to keep it alive. We cannot run the world the way we used to. When I was a freshman, you might like this. When I was a freshman, I was sent, but my parents are immigrants. I was born in the United States, but my father was born in France and my mother in Germany. So I speak French, German, and English, and I have since I've been a child. Okay, but I was born in the United States, so I'm an American by birth. Good. The position that I see here in the United States goes like this. One empire is dying. The British Empire is already dead. One empire is dying, the American. We were the empire that came after the British. We took over. That's finished. We are now declining. A new empire is emerging, and it's called the People's Republic of China. They all know this. Nobody disputes this. I mean, a few, but among the people I know, they get that. So the question is, what do you do? And the consensus view among them now is you can slow, but you cannot reverse the process. You can slow it. You can make one difficulty for China after another. Meanwhile, you are going to absorb Europe. You're going to make Europe shift its resources over to the United States. You're going to wreck Europe one by one. By the way, it has a name. It's called deindustrialization of Europe. And here's how it's done. Here's how it's done. In the name of nationalism, the United States is going to bring industry back home. This is the imagery. Crazy stuff, but this is what they think. The Chinese, they know, will never permit this to happen. If the Americans want to go, they'll go, but they will keep their factories and they will develop it. And the Americans, we don't care. So who will come to the United States, in fact, are the Europeans. You can see it already. Biden has given subsidies if you produce an electric car here. So who's coming? Peugeot, Renault, Volkswagen, they're all coming here because they have to. And so they're deindustrializing the United States is cleaning up viable industries in Europe and bringing them. That's the real agenda. And one of the ways to do that, brilliant, fell into their lap. You support Ukraine, you lead the Europeans, which we do, into a sanctions program. We won't buy Russian gas, we won't buy Russian oil, we won't insure Russian freighter ships and all the rest. The Russians, of course, fight back. They discover that they have good friends in New Delhi and in Beijing, and they sell their oil and gas. They don't need the West anymore. Meanwhile, the price of oil and gas, my family is partly French and German. They can't pay their monthly gas bill. They can't. There is no way for that. So the price of energy goes crazy. The export price of European produced goods carries the energy cost. They can't compete. The United States has its own source of oil and gas, doesn't need, never bought Chinese, Russian oil or gas, doesn't. So the United States doesn't have the inflation the Europeans do. This is, and you give subsidy. So between the unequal inflation and the subsidy, governmental money, and remember, much of the government of the United States, when it gives a subsidy, is using the money lent to the United States government by China, Japan. You have to laugh. You have to see the absurdity of what's going on. But here's the worst of it. Doesn't solve the problem. It makes things go slower. It softens the blow here in the United States. But we are a society being torn apart. If you were here, I would take you on I'm sitting in Manhattan. I live in New York City now. But I would take you on a tour, and I would show you the social divisions in this country. They are explosive. Americans are walking into movie theaters, supermarkets, and shooting everybody. They're completely every day. And if you look today, you'll see in I forgot where it was, but a Walmart store, the manager comes in and shoots 20 people, kills half a dozen, and it happens every day. My wife, who lives here with me, she will not take the subway in New York City. You know New York City, right? You've been here. So the subway is the fastest, cheapest way to move around the city. Most New Yorkers, they won't go in there. Too dangerous. Too dangerous. But no one puts together the larger picture and how it shapes the situation we have. The United States is simply, and I think, it might be that in a peculiar way, history has come to focus on your little country, your little island there in South Asia, that somehow you are going to be let go in this new dramatic way because they can't do anything anymore, and that you really are the future that Kenya, Uganda, and dozens of other countries have to look forward to.
Let's hope so. But talking of your 60 billion going to Ukraine, those armaments are going to end up here. Because even earlier in our war against terrorists, we bought from Ukraine armaments that couldn't be bought in here else at a very much cheaper price.
Yeah.
And most probably all those armaments will go that same route because they know them.
Yeah. Well, in European newspapers, it is a weekly joke, a weekly humor about the shipment of arms from the United States to Ukraine and then out of Ukraine to be shipped all over the world because the Ukrainian companies that do this are making a fortune of money because they basically get these armaments for free and then can market them at a
Mhm.
discount, and it's just my question to you is what is Sri Lanka going to do? What are the authorities there? You can't keep doing, I mean, you can't have another crooked loan. You can't have another cozy arrangement with your new government and the bankers from London or Paris or Berlin cutting a deal, giving themselves a bunch of money, buying off the political, and with a little bit left, do something for your harbor or your roads, and then the whole debt has to be paid back. And where's that money going to come from? I mean, you can't forever play that game. It's like a
I think
Ponzi
that
scheme.
that game is over,
Yeah.
and I have a feeling that it's probably not Sri Lanka, but Africa will be the place from which it ends, in the sense that they can actually live without them. They have not got into, by and large, the kind of socialism by the government. So the government can simply, you can devalue. Now, right now, because of devaluation, everybody in the tea industry in Sri Lanka is okay, because they're getting in rupees 3 times the amount that they got earlier. So devaluation does work, and you've driven people away from interest rates, and bankers make money by taking in bonds, not by doing loans. And therefore, actually a better generation of entrepreneurs or businesses arise who don't go to banks, which is very much better from day one if it had happened. So there is a change, and it's going to come, and uh, it is not going to be one that is going to have a united world, but it will be one that you might see all these desperate countries suddenly united. Right now in Kenya, the central bank has a deputy governor whose entire purpose in life is looking at apps. He told me that he gets more than one app a day, and they're very advanced. The some of my staff, whom I had as information officers, so on, I find they go to local hotels and they are doing this. They come up with very good solutions. In a way, all our economies are now becoming decoupled from the West. That I think is going to happen. And in
But
a way,
given
it's not a bad thing.
devaluation, how are people in Sri Lanka with these devaluations? How they can't they can't afford to buy the food that has to be brought in, right? Are they becoming self-sufficient in food?
No, there's a lot of charity. I mean, if I ask somebody to work in my house, I don't send him hungry. I give him food also. It's not part of any requirement what we do. All of us do. Moreover, we are really a semi-feudal country, so anybody with land or property takes it upon himself to be part of helping everyone else. This is true not only of Sri Lanka, but also of India. I used to think that only people like Gandhi going around talking had these people donating their lives and livelihoods. I went around talking in Varanasi for the stock exchange for weavers of the people's weavers. People used to come to me, and I'm dressed in normal clothes, and I don't even talk their language, and offering me their land. I said, no, you keep your land, but we will have a way of using it. I told them we must have a school somewhere, and they uprooted the local Hindu priest from his ashram and that became the school. So people can't be stopped. That is something that